Are you going to segregate that one of them fish?
The one about the park,
No, the one about,
the building?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask about it. I'm thinking of 18 and 22, but I wanna know more about that C-space thing too.
That was Frederickson? Were you here for that meeting?
Yeah, we talked about it, but I think
I'm confused.
we need a little more information because we just had him visit last week. Waste Commissioner's got nothing in writing. And all of a sudden, now we're gonna have a resolution and a public hearing on the 13th. That guy was pretty smooth. Pretty good sales.
who brought it forward was Sean Ferguson. Sean is, I talked to Sean a little bit about it, and he's talked to Danette. He's talked to everybody. He said it shouldn't be costing the county any money.
It goes in arrears, 3 years taxes in arrears, and put 800,000 in the building.
I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, April 6, 2022 to order. Clerk, could we please have a roll call?
There are 11 present, 1 absent.
11 present, 1 absent. Please note that Commissioner Shaw is excused from tonight's meeting. Commissioner Soares, could we have the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, fellow commissioners. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen. I pledge allegiance.
Next, we'll move on to, we'll do a friendly amendment before we do the approval of the minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the agenda. When it was originally published, the date for last meeting's minutes were March 23rd, and as you know, we didn't meet on March 23rd, so that should read March 16th.
We have a motion and a second to, on a friendly amendment to change the date from March 23rd to March 16th. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Do we?
I don't think
Oh, we don't vote on, so we do not vote on friendly amendment. So it's been changed. Thank you. All right, moving on to any items not addressed on the agenda. Clerk, we don't have any that are not addressed on the agenda tonight? Okay. Moving on to the Chief Executive's report. We have a pretty full agenda tonight, so I'm going to keep it brief. We will be, one of the things that we're going to do right away is we're going to move communication number 16 up underneath the Chief Executive's report and move it to a section to be read and acted upon. So that'll happen. So the next thing we will do is go to, I'll just do my real quick, just saying that we've got a lot on the agenda, so I won't do anything on the Chief Executive's report. We'll go back to the approval of the minutes for the March 16th regular meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes from the March 16th, 2022 regular meeting.
Second. We have a motion and a second, and now we vote. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. As I stated before, we're going to move a section to be read and acted upon, communication number 16, which is, if I can get to it, communication number 2022-148, JP Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council Commissioners' concurrence in the appointment of Aubrey Japp as the new Butte-Silver Bow Public Archives Director. The Archives Board of Directors unanimously approved a motion to recommend the appointments of Aubrey Japp to the Chief Executive. And could we have President of the Board, Mr. Brian Holland, come forward? There, we'll have you go over there where the speaker's at.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you, council members. I'll try and be brief. I know you have a full agenda tonight, but the Chief Executive asked me just to come up in my capacity as the Chair of the Archives Board, just give a little bit of background to the process for the recommendation for Aubrey, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here. And Aubrey's here, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chief Executive, if you want to hear from her, kind of a thing. But the Archives, the board, like a lot of other boards with the county, it was formed with the creation of the Archives back in '81. We're a 7-member board. In case you're wondering, the members in alphabetical order are Laurel Egan, myself, Bill McKenzie, Marissa Newman, Abby Peltema, Sarah Sparks, and Lee Whitney. So it's a good group. A lot of us have been on the board for a long time and have enjoyed it. And we're tasked with supervising the affairs of the archives. We're also tasked by the ordinance to make the recommendation for a director. So when Ellen announced her retirement earlier this year, we undertook the process to come up with that recommendation. We worked closely with HR. We also had discussions with the Chief Executive, with Finance and Budget. They were great to work with, and we worked our way through it. It was an external posting process, which we got applications, both locally, ranging from local to out of state, and went through the process, determined who to interview, and went through that process, had the interviews, had a good discussion following the interviews, and after that, we concluded that Aubrey was the strongest candidate. A motion was made and approved unanimously to recommend her to be the new director, succeeding Ellen Crane. So we're excited for Aubrey. We're looking forward to working with her, and we appreciate, again, all the support from council, the government, chief executive, all the departments. So again, Aubrey's here with her husband, chief executive, so I'm not sure next steps, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Holland. And so what we'll do is now we'll take a motion, and then we'll let Aubrey come up and address us afterwards. So, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to approve and place on file communication number 2022-148.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. And I'll let Aubrey please come up to the microphone. I personally want to say that I applaud the board for their external look at candidates, and as I've said many times, we have the most qualified people within our midst, and they found that out, that we have an outstanding individual that's going to lead us. Ellen Crane's shoes are hard to fill, but I think we have the person that's there ready to do this, and I've got to work with Aubrey a number of times already, and I know she's up to the task. So Aubrey, please.
Well, thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, members of council. I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity. The archives is just, I'm so passionate about the archives and the work we do. I'm looking forward to continuing the good work we've been doing and building upon those projects in the future. So I'm going to keep it brief, you all. I know you have a busy, busy night. So just thank you all so much.
Thank you, Aubrey. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda tonight, and that's public comment on any item on the agenda. Tonight, we're going to have a pretty full agenda, and so we are going to ask members as they come up of the public to keep it to 3 minutes. We will give you an indication when 3 minutes is going to be up so that everyone has an opportunity to do that tonight. So when you address, please say your name, address, and what agenda item you'll be speaking on tonight.
Orator Banderup, 2601 Grand Avenue. Reference Section 2, Consent Agenda. B, Communications. Number 20, Communication 2022-152, requesting council commissioners authorized to schedule a public hearing for an aware subdivision variance request. Normally, you make your comments during the public hearing, but I would like to make my comments tonight so you will have time before the public hearing and before the communication request comes before you in the regular council agenda to make your own appropriate inquiries and be able to make an informed decision. I am not opposed to development. I most definitely support this kind of facility that is needed for our community good and the common good of our greater community. But there's a but. What I do oppose is building this kind of a facility in an area that possesses a questionable health risk to humans before that cause of that health risk is mitigated. I must stipulate that MR most probably meets all the current permit, DEQ, and EPA standards required of them for the emissions of contaminants of concern in the area. But there are various local and international studies that indicate that those standards may not be sufficient to protect, particularly the most vulnerable human populations, from the health risk of exposure to airborne heavy metals contaminants coming from the MR dump site across the street into the area where this facility is proposed to be built. About 8 years ago, Sarah Sparks, the former EPA remedial project manager, gave Tad Dale, former vice president of human resources of Montana Resources, information relative to different systems at different mines to reduce dust dispersion at dump sites. Nothing's been done to date. I must request
Mr. Vanderup, you have 30 seconds left.
that you stipulate that construction of this aware facility be placed on hold until Montana Resources completes the construction of a negative airflow shed at the dumper site to mitigate the health problems.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderup. Do we have any other public comment on any item on the agenda tonight? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Brian McGregor, 133 South Main Street. I want to talk tonight about the proposed demolitions on East Park Street. And I'd like to say that these things seem to have usually follow a similar trajectory where a lot of work is done behind the scenes, and then at some point there's public announcements made where it seems like the conclusion of the decisions have already been made, and there's sort of this hand-wringing and, well, we'd like to do different, but usually there's some negative characterization of the building as being collapsing or falling in or rotting from the inside or some such thing. I would just like to say that although this has been the case, and a lot of people do not know the details and the background of some of these cases, and the newspaper has been no help in this. A lot of people do know, including me. And what we know is, some of what we know is this, that 135 East Park Street was wrestled away from its owners because of its condition and deemed unsafe and in need of abatement, which in Butte always means demolition. By the way, the Historic Preservation Ordinance specifically says abatement is not demolition. Abatement is just what it means. It's abatement. It's to fix the problem and to do whatever you can to repair whatever damage or issue is with a building, with demolition being the last resort. What we seem to have is the other way around. After 2 contractors declined the job, Public Works was brought in but soon gave up when the demolition proved too tedious and complicated. Suddenly the emergency wasn't an emergency anymore. And the building has sat untouched for 1.5 years. Also, at some point in this process, a specialist offered to deconstruct the building, which was the perfect solution to this dilemma. He was ignored. Now, 1.5 years later, comes this scheme to buy the adjoining buildings to the west, which is in fact 2 buildings, and to demolish all 3 buildings together. For those who have paid attention, it is common knowledge that these demolitions are not an easy and simple undertaking. They require massive amounts of energy and have huge impacts. And I will add that
You have 30 seconds left.
the county is proposing to buy these buildings for $38,000 to demolish them at great cost to us. I want to remind people that just the diesel fuel cost of tearing down the Brinks and Deluxe buildings was $30,000. You're talking about 2 massive buildings to have parking lots or more vacant lots, and we're in the middle of a boom where I get letters from my properties all the time. I know some of you do, anybody who's a property owner in Butte. They're trying to sell the Northwest Energy building for $700,000.
Mr. McGregor, your time is up. Thank you.
Do not let this happen. I'll let other people continue on this theme. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name, address, and the item that you'll be speaking on.
Good evening, council members, Chief Executive Gallagher. My name is Cameron Moylan. I live at 208 South Washington Street. I'm here to talk about the East Park proposal as well. Having been one of the only people to inspect the inside of 135 East Park, I knew when I first read the article in the paper that I'd have to come up and talk about it, because it's people have not been given the facts on this, and it's not very few people know the facts. I don't think the buildings have been properly inspected by the city. In looking at it myself, I could see that it's in horrible condition. 135 East Park is probably in worse condition than any other building in town. So I'm not here to try and say that building should be saved, that building should go. But there's ways to take it down without destroying all the good buildings around it. And those buildings around it are absolutely good buildings. So that the inside of 135 East Park was, I worked at the M&M for 3 years, and it's built just the same way. 135 East Park and the M&M are structurally identical buildings. And so the M&M, what happened to the M&M is perfect evidence of what needs to happen to 135. And there was no reason to rip down the buildings around the M&M, which was actually a much more precarious situation after that tragedy. And 135 can be dealt with the same way. Absolutely no reason to rip down the buildings around it. So, lastly, I've got an offer from some clients to purchase the Rescue Mission thrift store for $100,000. That sounds a lot better than $38,000 to me. And I think the Rescue Mission I think they're getting the short end of the stick of this deal. I think they're getting ripped off. So I personally would still be willing to buy 135 East Park. I had an offer in to buy it 2 years ago and take care of it for the city. Had no contingencies. I'd accept all the liabilities. So at any rate, that's what I've got to say. There's absolutely no reason to rip down a whole block of Butte just to get rid of one building. And that's the reason why I'm here. I know I'm not the only one who loves Butte. And
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah. Nothing pains me more than seeing big swaths of this city getting ripped down needlessly. So please vote no to destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moylan. Please state your name, address.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sparks, a grandmother. 615 13th Street, Butte, Montana. And I'm also here to talk about the East Park Street. And I believe if it moves forward and the Butte taxpayers do take over that property, certain things should happen. And that includes that we recover all costs from past studies, from the demolition, from materials going into the landfill, because it will cost, even if Butte-Silver does the demolition, there's a cost for that going to the landfill. And that if the property is sold, all monies are recovered. I believe that's very important. And the second thing is that if that property is sold and someone decides to build there, that those buildings must meet historic preservation standards in Uptown Butte. And I don't think that we should lose sight of that as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sparks. Anyone else? Please state your name and address.
Carol Barney, 345 Herman Gulch Road, Butte, Montana. I might be a little redundant, but I want to address the cost to Butte taxpayers for the situations at 12325 and 135 East Park. The expenditure of over $38,500 for the purchase of 123, 125 paid to Butte Rescue Mission, and also 2 studies by engineers for at least $50,000 apiece, and a demolition estimate only of $25,000, not to mention the cost of wages to the Silverville County employees for their work on the issue. This is a very large, yet to be determined payout of taxpayer money. And as a taxpayer, this concerns me as to how we, the Butte taxpayer, can expect a positive return and positive outcome for all the money that will be spent on this issue. That this property not become another empty, costly space in Uptown Butte is a hope. In short, how can this money that's spent become a positive for Butte? I do hope that these East Park properties can have a great ending and be an addition to the uniqueness of Butte when the decisions are made. It's most important that these properties become something that honestly represents us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I need to introduce Mr. Jeff Swanson. He drove all the way over here from Livingston tonight. He's a guy that could save the county an awful lot of money when it comes to demolition. It doesn't need to be wildly
He
expensive.
can introduce himself, please. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Swanson out of Livingston. I've been in the barnwood salvage business for 21 years straight. I only do buildings that are going to be burnt or excavated or whatever to just reclaim the lumber out of them. And if they can be saved, they should be saved, because it gets rid of all the history. But I could save a lot of money by salvaging at least the wood part of the buildings, reclaiming the lumber out of them instead of having them go to the landfill. And I've got 21 years experience doing that as an option.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Mitzi Rosillian. I live at 815 West Granite, and I'm talking concerning Communication 2022-172. Get the impression that we're now supposed to try to just get through this or just get over it. But instead, we should be trying to set it right. And by that I mean a mistake was made many months ago when the demolition, prior to the demolition, when it began to commence, but no one looked and saw that there was a party wall. And from that point on, everything has gone downhill. In order to we can't, there's still a party wall there, but there are things that we can do that can make it right, and that also means that we save the buildings in the block. What I would say is, first of all, before I go into that, I want to talk about the consequence of demolishing these buildings. We act as if there is no cost if there's no cost associated with the loss of these buildings other than what Carol Barney just said. In fact, there is a tremendous cost, and that is the cost of our historic buildings. I have to repeat what someone said, and that is we are talking about demolishing these buildings at a time when people are coming to our community and laying out these most outlandish funds for pieces of junk. And we welcome them with open arms because they're in the opportunity zone. They want to spend that money, they know how to spend the money, and they've got the money to spend. And so when we see what happened at the O'Rourke, where that building surely would have gotten the death knell, as the others have, especially on these properties, and we see them deconstructing an entire wall, jacking the whole thing up, and going to build 6 luxury apartments in there, I think that's the context that we need to be considering in the discussion of this property. So, the costs are not just the costs, how much money it is also, again, dump fees, and it is the cost of having a critical block have nothing but one building on one side and an old tire shop on the other.
Mr. Zane, 30 seconds.
I suggest that we install the wall that Staley first proposed to us more than a year ago. It seemed like a good idea. I hear, although I did not see that in the proposal, is $150,000. $150,000 at this point definitely is better than the cost we're going to incur going forward. We sell the 2 Butte Rescue Mission buildings as they are and let a new owner remedy the deficiencies. Lastly, about the deficiencies that were identified.
Mr. Zane, your time is up.
I'll just say seismic is not appropriate. Every building would be down here if we had to tear them down because they didn't need maximum
Thank you for your time.
seismic.
Is there any other public comment on any items on the agenda tonight?
Good evening. My name is Marc James. I'm retired Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I was a recruiter here in town. And
Can you give us your address, please?
Sorry?
Your address.
Yes, 401 North Montana.
Thank you.
And I happen to have one of these old buildings. And I've been putting my heart and soul into it for over 12 years. I also am right across the street from the URA boundary line, and I've received no money at all. I've been doing it out of pocket on my own. So this is kind of a subject that's dear to my heart, and I just found out about this, or I would have prepared remarks, so please excuse me for that. But just thinking that I think we need more time on this. You guys need to reconsider this, and this is all I'm hearing. I'm a guy who pretty much keeps to himself, but everybody I've been talking to in town, I've been hearing this. This is an extremely unpopular idea, and I don't think you have a lot of backing on this from the citizenry itself. And I also like to say, any of you that have ever traveled to Europe, especially like Germany, France, and Belgium, that was, parts of their cities are completely destroyed by bombing in World War II. They had the foresight to rebuild a lot of those at a tremendous amount of cost. What did it do in the long run? They become tourist destinations. Only in America do we take a building that's less than 150 years old and want to knock it down and put a parking lot in it. This is extremely short-sighted, and quite honestly, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but this just seems like there's a fix in that is somebody, the person that's the people that are going to end up tearing it down. It just seems all too convenient for a quick buck without any long-term thought about the possibility of reclaiming this structure and its intrinsic worth to the community at large. I remember going up there as a kid in the 70s, to some of those shops, and there were deals to be had. My mom was a collector of antiques, and it was a neat, charming part of town, and I think it could be again. You don't see this happening. You don't see this happening in Seattle. You don't see this happening in Portland, per se. You know, there's always the argument there's not enough parking, or that sort of thing either, and I think we have enough parking here. It's not used correctly a lot of times, and so if that's an issue, that's not relevant, I don't think. But you'd be surprised how many people would, you know, it increases foot traffic when you have businesses that...
Mr. James, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll finish up here. You would have plenty of foot traffic going into those buildings if they were repurposed for a restaurant, shop, or what have you. So, and also there's the landfill issue as well. I think there would be tremendous cost to tear this thing down and keep filling up the landfill with materials that could be reclaimed. I thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. James. Any other public comment on any item on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. We do have one bid opening, communication number 2022-123. Marc, Neri, Public Works Director, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to schedule a bid opening for April 6, 2022 for hot asphalt and polymer for the 2022 construction season. County Attorney, do you have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, there is proof of publication. Appear to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Marc Neri, Public Works Director. We have two bids that were turned in for hot asphalt tonight. The first one is from Hollow Contracting in Butte.
And Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Hollow's bid for the 10,000 tons was $71.35 for the total of $713,500. And on the polymer, which there was two parts to the bid, was 3,000 tons, and that was at $80 a ton for $240,000.
First one was $713,500, and the second was $240,000.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The second bid is from Copper City Asphalt in Butte.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total for the 10,000 tons of asphalt is $74.45 per ton for a total of $744,500. And on the 3,000 tons, $78.75 for the total of $236,250.
So the two bids would, first one is $744,500. The second amendment to it is $236,250.
Yes.
Thank you. so on this we go. Okay. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to place this back to the Public Works Department with their recommendation back to this body.
We have a motion and a second. Anything on the question? Commissioner Reardon.
I have a question, is obviously, unless I missed something here, is we have one bid that is lower on one particular item and another bid that is lower on the other item. Is this a group package, or are we going to do business in the lowest in both bids?
Thank you, Commissioner Reardon. Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Reardon. We'll go back and look through the bid tabs and just check and see where the numbers are.
Okay, now it'll be brought back to us what we're going to do?
Yes, we'll come back with a recommendation.
All right, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Anderson.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Executive. What was the estimated cost of this when we were looking at it?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioner Anderson, all we can go off of is what our price was last year, and it was $63.50 a ton. We only went out for the certain, we didn't go out for the polymer asphalt last year, just the regular asphalt.
Just the regular.
Yeah, I'm sure with the increase in fuel and stuff, that's added cost.
Thank you, Director Neri. Any other questions of the commissioners? So we have a motion and a second to refer this back to the Public Works Department. Anything on the question? Commissioners, please vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yeas, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to public hearings. We have 4 public hearings tonight. Our first one is communication number 2022-113, Lori Baker Patrick, Butte-Silver Treasurer, requesting Council of Commissioners to schedule a public hearing for April 6, 2022 agenda for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue from the Montana Motor Vehicle Division. Ms. Patrick.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, members of the council. I'm Lori Baker Patrick, Butte-Silver County Treasurer. This public hearing is for the unanticipated revenue received from the Montana Department of Justice Motor Vehicle Division in the amount of $708 to offset costs for paper and toner used in our motor vehicle department in the Treasurer's office. I'm going to be brief, but I will give you a little rundown on this. We didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of this money before it came in, so just to bring you up to speed where I am, the Motor Vehicle Division has always paid for these costs. We had an agreement with the Motor Vehicle Department and the Department of Justice that expired in early January. There is a new administrator for the Motor Vehicle Division. Her name is Lori Backery. She sent us a letter. All of the counties that collect a county option tax received this letter, reiterating our amount of county option we received in 2021, along with our plate fees, and hoping that we were spending that money wisely. That money, our county option tax per statute, 50% goes to the county, the other 50 goes to the county and incorporated cities and towns within that county. It has nothing to do with the state. So I was a little offset when I received that letter from her, but set it aside. Beginning in February, my motor vehicle supervisor was ordering her paper, which she normally did, and those orders were declined without any response to why they were declined. For the February 17th meeting, it's regularly scheduled for motor vehicles. It's a Teams meeting. They briefly discussed this issue that the Motor Vehicle Division had $25,000 in their budget to split between 56 counties to offset these costs in their counties, and it would be based on the usage per county per year. So hence the $708 for Butte-Silver. On March 29th, the treasurers met with Lori Backey, and we talked about the supply issue. We did a survey for the Department of Justice Motor Vehicle Division, And one of the questions on the survey was the amount of registration paper that we use, and that is only one item, which is large, the registration paper. We use about 16 cases of paper just for registration. That does not include any of the other forms that we have to use or give to the public. So I priced some of the paper here in town at our local vendors, and they run anywhere from $45 to $48 per case. We usually order in a bulk in our office, so we get a little bit better rate. That is going to eat up our budget of $708. So I'm grateful that we did receive some money, but that's all I have on that subject.
Thank you, Ms. Baker Patrick. And I got asked, do we have proof of publication before I open it up for commissioners?
There is proof of publication, and it is in order.
Thank you. Is there any questions of commissioners? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. I'll call for proponents. Are there any proponents? Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. We'll move on to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. I'll close the public hearing. Thank you. All right, moving on to communication number 2022-120, Mike Clegg, Deputy County Attorney, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on April 6th for the purpose of obtaining comment on amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget in order to receive grant funds from the BIA in the amount of $566,110 for Veterans Treatment Court and the BSB DUI Court to improve its operation. County Attorney Joyce, do we have proof of publication?
Mr. Chief Executive, we do have proof of publication for this communication and for the next two public hearings, and they are all in order.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clegg.
Chief Executive, Council Commissioners, we're seeking to amend the budget to allow a vehicle to accept the grant award. The county and the Chief Executive has already approved and accepted the award. We just need the budgetary ability to start accepting and paying for that. This grant award is to supply operation costs for the DUI court and the Veterans Court for the next 3 years. There is no cash match associated. There is a match in county employees' times and county. Most people don't say I talk soft enough to need a microphone, but if anybody needs me to restart, I can do that. So there is no, there's no cash match. There's a match in salary and benefits, and there is the match in the facilities, the courtrooms here on the 3rd floor that we'll be using. Other than that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Any questions of commissioners? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Clegg. I'll open up the public hearing. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Seeing none, I'll open up for opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Moving on to communication number 2022-124, Marc Neri, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on April 6, 2022 for the sole source of smart sensor traffic control for traffic lights throughout Butte. A resolution will be introduced on April 20th, 2022 regular meeting. We would like to update the traffic lights throughout the city as needed for fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024. Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioners, for the record, I'm Public Works Director Marc Neri. We need to sole source this smart sensor traffic control to be the same as what we have with MDT. We aren't changing out the lights, but we're actually upgrading them for it'll have a sensor on it rather than the loop system in the asphalt. So there won't be new lights installed, but the sensors will be installed. But advanced traffic products is the only person who manufactures this one, so we're in compliance with MDT. That's why we're asking for the sole source.
Thank you, Director Neri. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Mr. Neri, does this have anything to do with any school lights around? Would that be able to intertwine with the school lights that are wanted around the community at every school? Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioner O'Neill, no. Has nothing to do with the schools.
Thank you, Director Neri. Any other questions of commissioners? Seeing none, thank you, Director Neri. We'll open up the public hearing. Call for proponents. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Seeing none, I'll move to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Moving on to communication number 2022-127, Marc Neri, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing on April 6, 2022 for sole source of UV disinfection replacement materials for the wastewater treatment plant, Wwtp. A resolution will be introduced on April 20th, 2022, regular meeting. This is to extend the sole source to cover repair materials needed for the system in fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024. Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioners, this is kind of similar to the last one. It's the only place, Trojan UV is the only place that we can get our parts for our system that we have right now. The UV disinfection at the wastewater treatment plant is the final disinfection before it's released into the creek. And the parts are for wipers and some of the controls for them too. So it's the same thing. We only have one place that we can get these parts.
Thank you, Director Neri. Any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. First call for proponents. Second call for proponents. Third and final call for proponents. Seeing none, we'll move to opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Moving on to Section 2, Consent Agenda. Section A, Committee Reports 1 through 4, and B, 1 through 40, with the exception of item number 16, which we already moved to be moved and acted upon. So that one will be taken off. Do we have any friendly amendments or segregations? Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'd like to segregate number 11 out of the Committee of the Whole report, Communication 2022-19.
Okay, let's find that. That's communication number 11, 2022-119. That's number 11 of the Committee of the Whole.
Yep.
Any other?
And, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And then communication 13, or number 13, communication 2022-146.
And that's on the regular
Correct.
agenda. So that's communication number 2022-145. Any other segregations or friendly amendments? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I would like to segregate communication number 22 and communication number 34.
That's communication number 2022-154, and number, what was the second one, Commissioner Fisher?
Number 34.
Number 34, communication number 2022-166.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I'd like to segregate communication number 40, communication number 2022-172.
That's communication, that's number 40, number 2022-172. Any other segregations or friendly amendments? Commissioner Shea?
Question, if I could get a clarification on your second segregation? I missed the number.
Oh, 13.
13, I'm sorry.
Communication 2022-146.
So 13 is 145.
13 is 145.
Oh, I
That's why was
apologize,
confused.
145.
Okay,
145.
thank you.
Any other segregations? Commissioner O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to, communication number 28, number 2022-160, please.
Okay, that's communication number 2022-160. Any other segregations? Seeing none, Commissioner Frederickson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Bear with me on this one here. I move to approve Section 2 of the consent agenda, 1 through 4, and B 1 through 40, with the exceptions of 11 out of the Committee of the Whole Report, communication number 2022-19, number 13, communication 2022-145, 16, communication number 2022-148, 22, communication number 2022-154, number 28, communication number 2022-160, number 34, communication 2022-166, and communication 40, number 40, communication number 2022-172.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. We'll move back to, we'll go in the order that we have. We'll go to communication 13, communication.
11.
Oh, you want to go to the 11 on the committee of the whole report? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. We'll go to the number 11 on the committee of the whole report, communication number 2022-119, Mike Boyce, Carpenters Union Hall, requesting council commissioners authorization to relocate a boundary for Carpenters Hall located at 156 West Granite. With the boundary relocation, you would give permission for us to build our elevator. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I spoke with Director Pipinich earlier, and the survey on this has been complete. So the recommendation now would be to refer this to land sales. So I make a motion to refer communication 2022-119 out of the Committee of the Whole to land sales.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move this communication to land sales. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to number 13, communication number 2022-145, Sean Frederickson, Council Commissioners, District 1, requesting Council Commissioners provide its concurrence to have the City, County of Butte-Silver, Montana adopt a resolution of intent to establish a CPACE commercial property assessed capital enhancement program within Butte-Silver authorized by Title 90, Chapter 4, Part 13, the PACE Act of Montana Code annotated. I would also request that a public hearing be scheduled for April 13, 2022. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I need to apologize to our county attorney because I set the public hearing date a little too early. So I would like to amend this communication to have the request to have the, to adopt a resolution of intent and hold a public hearing on April 27th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to request a public hearing for April 27th. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Will we be having the public hearing prior to the request for the resolution of intent?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will ask
I'll refer to our
County Attorney Joyce. Yes.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Fisher, yeah, that's the reason for the change in the public hearing date, because the public hearing will be regarding the resolution of intent, which won't be able to be introduced until the next regular meeting on the 20th. So if you pass that resolution of intent on first reading, then the public hearing can happen, or I guess, yeah, then the public hearing can happen the following week on the 27th. You won't pass it on first reading, but it'll be introduced and you can have the public hearing on the 27th. It'll be in the judiciary at that time, and then it can move to final reading.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, yes, it did. Follow-up is, my concern is the gentleman gave the presentation last week, done a great job. I mean, he's a good salesman. But a lot of that, I didn't do enough studying, so I'd just like a little more information. And I look forward to the 27th hearing and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up, but we'll have plenty of time to discuss it and get all your questions answered.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederickson. Any other questions? Commissioner Frederickson? So did we pass it?
Motion and second.
Oh, so, yeah. So could commissioners please vote? Get knocked off pace here. Commissioner Reardon? Okay. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2022-154, Kristen Rosa, TIFA Administrator, requesting Council Commissioners authorization for Chief Executive Gallagher to sign a lease agreement with Let's Go Moving for 12,000 square feet of building space in Montana Connections. The term of the lease is for 5 years with 5 years renewal. And Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I just wanted to point a clarification here that this was either $6,000 per year or $6,000 per month.
Could we have Mrs. Rosa address that question?
Can't see. I should have taken my glasses off. Commissioner Fisher, Chief Executive Gallagher, it is $6,000 per month, and it is an existing lease that we've had with them, and they've been paying it on time for the last 2 years.
Thank you, Kristen. Does that answer your question? Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Any other questions of commissioners? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate the information. I would make a motion at this time that we concur and place on file communication 2022-154.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 28, communication number 2022-160, Dylan Pippenich, Planning Director, requesting Council Commissioners and Chief Executive Gallagher concurrence with recommendation to approve zone change application number 21-000004 and prepare an ordinance adopting the proposed change to Butte-Silver zoning district map. The application requests approval of a change of the zoning classification of approximately 350 acres of land currently not zoned to RM2 rural industrial. And Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I'd love to bring Dylan Pippenich up for a question if I could. I know he's going to be really excited about me asking him a question tonight, so I hate for him to come up to the meeting tonight and not get any action, so Dylan, I appreciate it.
Director Pippenich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive.
My question being that since we're going to be at some point going through a zoning changes through the county, forgive me, I forget the name of the zoning, you know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, but that's what brought you up. You know what I'm saying, so you'll read my mind. If we go through that, the RM2 change here isn't, what effects could that have on this? So if we approve this today, next month or whatever, we start the rezonings of the whole county, could this affect this anyway? Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, for the record, I'm Dylan Pipinich, Planning Director. Commissioner O'Neill, so the hope and the intent is to redo the zoning ordinance. We're in the process of trying to procure a consultant to do that. This particular area, you know, Montana Connections itself is going to be zoned industrial. I could almost guarantee that after the zoning, if the zoning ordinance is overhauled. This particular area, you know, we had an application and we evaluated the criteria. One of them is zoning must be in accordance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan for this area is economic driver that guides the zoning designation to industrial. So I hope I'm answering your question. I'm reading your mind here. From a standpoint, it's going to be zoned industrial or it's probably going to remain unzoned.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Commissioner O'Neill, follow up?
Thank you, Chief Executive. So with that being said, if we pass it tonight as it is, when we go through the zoning ordinance change with recommendations for certain areas, if you will, industrial, during that zoning change thing, you can throw in some bits and pieces, if you will, on lighting, so on and so forth, being too industrial, if you will.
Commissioner O'Neill, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner O'Neill. So during the public hearing, you heard of concerns of lighting. Actually, the RM2 zone was amended, I believe last year, maybe a year and a half ago, to fix that the lighting issue that was brought up. So there's already provisions in the RM2 to control lighting and how it's directed that are about a year old. Actually, the RM2 zone is probably it's our newest zone. It's probably, you know, if we get the opportunity to amend the ordinance, that zoning designation probably won't see much amendment because it's fairly new and it's tailored for Montana Connections.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Any other questions of commissioners? Commissioner Reardon and Commissioner Anderson.
My question to you is basically with this new zoning, I'm not really up on it myself. I think that my question would be is I understand that there's some residential areas in the vicinity, and how would that affect this, what this R2 would do for those citizens that've been there for a period of time? I get progress, it's a great deal and all that, but I think, you know, we have to look at some of the situations, and I'd like a little bit more on this R2 designation. Will that hinder or will that help? Thank you.
Commissioner Reardon, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Reardon. So what is it before you tonight would be two options. One, that it's become zoned RM2 or that it remain unzoned. There are no regulations for an unzoned area. The residential areas to the south are unzoned. They don't have any regulation. Zoning it to RM2 would then put some regulation and some protections for surrounding properties where currently there are none.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Dylan, thank you. I might be missing something here, which honestly wouldn't be the first time. But in a similar vein to what Commissioner Reardon brought forward, in this area there is quite a bit of residential areas, and you said that the communication says that not zoned would be moved to rural industrial, an RM2 zone. And then you said with the new code, it would probably go to industrial or stay as non-zoned. Why would we be taking the step to move it to RM2 if later on we'd be moving it to industrial? And how would that impact the homeowners that are there currently?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, so RM2 is, to be honest, I don't even know what it stands for, but it's our rural industrial, so it's a rural heavy industrial zone. So RM2 designation is industrial. They're synonymous. It's our heaviest industrial zone.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Okay, follow up, Commissioner Anderson.
How would moving this to that industrial affect the residences that are there?
Commissioner Anderson, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Anderson, so the difference from, hypothetically say it became RM2 tomorrow, so the difference between yesterday and tomorrow would be that there are zoning regulations on that piece of ground, where yesterday there were none. So there's no, if it is remains unzoned, there are no regulation regarding use for that property at all. Where the RM2 zone lists permitted industrial uses, it has setback requirements, it has special review requirements, and if you vary from that, it has public hearings, things like that.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Commissioner Sorich was up, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Thank you. Dylan, I recall we had the woman from the state of Montana here a couple of weeks ago also. How does this play into this?
Commissioner Sorich, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Sorich, so the land is owned by the state of Montana. It's a school trust section, it's section 36. She spoke a little bit about the requirements of school trust sections and how they are needed to generate income for the state of Montana. That's why that they are looking at this, because it is adjacent to an industrial zone. They're required to generate profit off of state lands. So she also did mention that any use that was proposed for those state lands goes through a pretty rigorous public involvement through the DNRC and through their land. So if there are any proposed uses in the future, there is a public process, regardless if it's zoned or not.
Thank you, Director Pipinich. Okay. Is there any other questions of commissioners? Seeing none, we go back to, who was it that was? Oh, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. This time I'd like to place communication number 2022-160 and concur and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 34, 2022-166. Eileen Joyce, County Attorney, requesting Council Commissioners authorization for Chief Executive Gallagher to sign easements between Butte-Silver Bow, City County of Butte-Silver Bow, and Montana Resources between Todd Miller and Kimberly Kelly Miller and the City County of Butte-Silver Bow. All the easements are related to the Molten Water Line relocation project. County Attorney, Commissioner Fisher, sorry.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I guess my question for the county attorney is, are we going to be paying any monies to any of these for their easement?
Commissioner Fisher, County Attorney Joyce, I guess we'll bring up Director Neri to answer that question.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioner Fisher, Montana Resources is taking care of any monies that will be paid to, and this isn't the only easement, there's a few of them up there, but Montana Resources is taking care of all of, Butte-Silver Bow isn't paying for the easements at all.
Thank you, Director Neri.
Thank you, Director Neri. With that being said, I would make a motion to place on file, concur and place on file communication 2022-166. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication number 2022-166 to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would, oh, did we lose Commissioner Anderson? Okay. Do we wait for Commissioner Anderson to come back out of the bathroom? He's in the bathroom. Okay. We'll hold for a second here. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to number 40, communication number 2022-172, Eileen Joyce, County Attorney, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for Chief Executive Gallagher to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City and County of Butte-Silver and the Butte Rescue Mission. The MOU contemplates the city, county purchasing the property located at 123 and 125 East Park Street from the Butte Rescue Mission, which shares a common wall with the property located at 135 East Park Street, which is owned by the city and county. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here today to speak on this communication. One of the problems I have with this is that we just do not seem to use very much foresight when we're going into this. I didn't like tearing down this building when it came before us originally, 135, because, well, I don't like tearing down our history. More to the point, I don't like tearing down our assets in the community kind of more often willy-nilly. I'm afraid. I don't like to, you know, every once in a while there's a good reason behind something, but every once in a while, and we can see it throughout the community, where people are investing like never before in a lot of these properties. They're doing a lot of work that hasn't been done before. I see a great project just down the street from there with the Exerdance building and the amount of money and resources being put into that building. I look at the Old Fox Hotel where the Dodge brothers used to be. There was a restaurant there. There was a lot of work that's been done there, and it's been vacant now for a little while, but I'm imagining something will be moving into there in short term. I know that the YMCA building has new ownership, and they're looking at it. I look at the Irish Times, the old bar. It recently burnt. It has no roof or anything now, and it's in a kind of a same state of disrepair yet. You know, we have people investing and going in with money, resources, time, materials, because they see a vision for something. And I'm afraid when we keep on throwing the wrecking ball at these buildings and our history, we're getting rid of something that cannot be replaced. Yes, there's a very good chance that there'll be another building there, but no, it will be nowhere near the architectural value that the current building has at 135, and to a lesser degree the ones occupying the block. I've been against pretty much every one of these. I think I voted one for demolition of one building because I felt a need for it, but the rest of them I've been dead set against. And it'll probably come as no shock that I'm dead set against this one. Also, we've been told that it's an immediate danger, and I see some I went to the, I wanted to see how big of an immediate danger it was, so I went to the thrift shop today and I saw a bunch of books. It was open, there was a lot of people milling around. And so I milled around a little bit and looked at a few walls, talked to a few people, and saw upstairs a little bit into some of the back room and some laughing plaster falling off. And I understand there's been a lot of damage to one of the walls, and I feel that the community, not the community, the county government, when we went in and decided to tear down the one that we caused a majority of the damage to that wall. I'm not sure if anything can be done to preserve it right offhand, but I think stabilizing it would be a good option. I hear that there are people interested in buying it. As of now, I don't have any of that, but it's just different things going through the grapevine. And it's sad to see. It's sad to see. The other thing I'll mention too, the point is, when we're looking at economic development, we have a lot of interest in these buildings and people fixing them up to apartments and stores and other things. We're always looking for more housing in the community. When you look at the price of housing, and houses are going for these days, and nice apartments are hard to find. So it's nice to see that work being done. One of the other big things going on in our community these days is a lot of film. And talking to some of the set directors and a few other people working on these film projects the last couple of years in our community, one thing they always mention is the architecture and how important that architecture is to the community and to the film. They can recreate downtown Chicago, downtown New York and everything at a fraction of the cost in filming in those locales. So it's something really neat that I think we need to take into consideration when we're looking at that. So at this time, what I'd like to do is make a motion to deny communication 22-172.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny communication number 2022-172. Is there anything on the question? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I agree with a lot of what Bill said. I agree with a lot of things. This is not a good situation. We got ourselves into a bad situation a couple of years ago. But we've had 2 engineering firms. Everyone that spoke to save that building tonight, I've never seen anyone show a PE, professional engineering. Nobody showed anything like that. Everybody had a lot of concerns and questions. But we had 2 professional engineers look at that building, 3, and we got the same results. And now, as long as I've been on this commission, no one seems to want to buy them buildings till they're ready to go. Now, if you wanted to buy that building, you probably could have went and got a buy-sell agreement a year or 8 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever. But now, all of a sudden, it's time to tear it down, and everybody wants to buy it. Now, I'm in the retail business. I'm going to tell you what, a lot of people want to buy it, but how long are we going to kick this down the road? I mean, you know, we got a house at Basin Creek Reservoir they still want to renovate. I've been going through that for 8 years. JP was the Park and Rec director at the time. This building up there is viable property without the buildings. I've had calls that people are willing to buy the property when the buildings are gone. Now, everyone talks about taxpayer money. Taxpayer money is correct, but it's money coming from the URA. It's the increment. It's not coming from people that live down on the flats or up north of Walkerville or around. The money coming for this, the $38,000 is coming for this, is coming from the increment of Uptown Butte. So let's not get into the conversation like people living in the country club and down where I live and stuff are paying the bill for this. We're not. It's the increment that's paying for this. And I'm going to tell you, I could go on forever and ever, but I'm telling you, we've got to start doing something in Butte to make the buildings that are salvageable move real quick and get done. He talks about Dodge Brothers. Good friend of mine owned it. It's been empty for over a year. Putting thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. It's empty. Exodance, nice building. Fox Theater, or Mother Lode, nice building. YMC, nice building. How much money can you put into a community this size before you realize we've got to start making things right? So I would make a substitute motion at this time that we concur and place on file communication 2022-172. Thank you.
We have a substitute motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Unfortunately, Jim, you and I seem to bump heads on when you start throwing numbers out there and who's responsible and who's paying. And the URA is paying to buy the building. Who's paying to tear the building down? Who's paying to take care of everything that goes to the dump? Who's paying all those costs? You're sitting there telling the people that you aren't paying that bill. You are paying that bill, and it's going to be an extremely large bill. You're talking, Mr. Chief Executive Gallagher said there's been 3 PAs. Is there a PA in the public tonight? Because we got lots of questions to ask. I've got 100 questions to ask. Where are the PAs that made, the PEs that made this decision? They should be here tonight to answer our questions. First of all, we were told the first building, the gentleman said he would have bought it as is and took over liability. They said, no, we won't allow you to do that. Who's going to answer that question? Where's Mr. Randall? He got us into this position. How about Mrs. Burns? Her and Mr. Randall got us in these positions. We were in the same boat here a year ago with the cribs. I says, I got questions to ask. Would you allow us to go see what you're telling us is wrong? Oh, absolutely not. It's so dangerous you can't go in that building. They had a yard sale, a garage sale a week later trying to sell the stuff out of the building. How big of fools are we to sit there and get beat up every time they come before us over what's going on? Our system is broken, and it's severely broken. We need to fix it. And it is the taxpayers, Jim. Don't tell us that it's not the taxpayers. Our Public Works Department is the whole city's taxpayers. I want to thank the gentleman that was driving the excavator when they started tearing that building down. He was at least sharp enough to know that once he got into that wall that he stopped. If he didn't, the liability could have been huge. There was people in the building. This building now they're talking about, there's people in there shopping every day. It's so dangerous it has to come down. We were told the 2 buildings next to it. You know what? There's 3 buildings next to it. Do we not know that it's 3 buildings? Who's going in these buildings and checking? We, as councilmen, as long as we're the ones making the decisions, should have a right to be able to go and see what we're voting on. And to this point, we've been kept out of the picture, and that's wrong. Our system is broken, and many of us have spoken about this. It needs to be fixed. We don't have an answer how to fix it, but it still needs to be fixed. So as long as you went ahead and motioned to kill the motion, I will motion to kill all motions.
We have a motion to kill all motions. Second. We have huh? Yeah, what is your motion?
What is your motion to end all motions?
To hold it in advance until we can get a chance. To hold it in abeyance so we can get a chance for us to at least see what we're voting.
So we have a motion to hold in abeyance to kill all motions. And do we have a second? And we have a second. Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. You know, I can appreciate everybody's concern for the history, a concern for Uptown Butte. I think we're all here for the same reasons. You know, so when I hear people say, you don't care about history, you don't care, that's wrong. We're all here because we do care. You know, we have 3 professional engineers. Who on this board can say they're a professional engineer? I can't. Dan can't. None of us can. So how can we go in there and argue with a PE? We don't have those qualifications. We don't have them. So how can you go in there and say, this is, you know, so as far as they're saying safety, yeah, it probably is a safety. If somebody did get hurt, what would happen? Who would be responsible then? I think we got a responsibility to do it and do it soon.
Commissioner Sorge. I'd like to respond to a couple of the things that are being stated here. You know, we did have 3 engineers go through this, and to Commissioner Callahan's point, they have wrote reports directly. Some of them are not here. We have people up here that don't have that kind of experience that have written in exactly what it is. We've gone through 3 different ones, one with historical architecture background, that came into that. We specifically went for them. We were recommended by the other the other engineer to bring that Staley engineer in here because of his background dealing with historic buildings. That's why they were brought into here. His report specifically, if everyone read through it, it specifically states the rationale behind it. And the things that we're talking about tonight are public safety. It doesn't mean that it's imminent that it's going to fall tomorrow. It's a public safety exclusion. We have a willing party that is part of that other building that allowed us in there before we put $150,000 wall up that is taxpayer money, that we would have had to brace that wall up with no guarantee that they would do anything for that building. In fact, that if you read that architect's or the PE's report, said the chance is highly likely that that building is in jeopardy of falling. The report does say that. So we do have those reports. We've had professional engineers in there look at it. One of the problems that we had on 135 was they couldn't get inside the building to look to see if there was that adjoining wall. And so that came to light, and nobody would go in there until after the fact that we had to do something about a building that the roof had collapsed. Butte-Silver, and I'm sorry to say that this happens to us, but we get put in the situation by neglect of the landowners. And that makes all of us up here at each other's throat. There's not one person on this board or in the audience out there that I think that wants to see any of these buildings go away. I don't. And there's no hidden plan. There's no plan of what's going to happen to that property. But one thing I can say about that property, it will be highly marketable. And it is one way that we can pay back the taxpayers by selling that property, that we can recover some of that money. But we also could put $150,000 into a wall that the building will have to come down afterwards, and then we would turn it back over to the Butte Rescue Mission and put it onto them, and the safety exclusion has not gone away. It has not changed anything. It will not go back to historic preservation. It's already gone through the process that we have on dangerous buildings and our ordinances that are already there. So the only thing it does is puts the onus back onto the rescue mission. So I just want people to understand, by what we're doing tonight, the only thing that you're doing is stopping this, and now we're going to send it back to the Butte Rescue Mission by not signing, because this is just an MOU about what we're doing. And so now it puts it back on them, and so now if it has to be torn down, it's going to put on there. And the safety exclusion does not go away. This does nothing to the safety exclusion. So I just kind of want to let people know what we're doing tonight and what the motions have stopped and what the progress on this is going on. So Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. So from my standpoint, I'm a bit frustrated, I'd say, to start out, because the very leadership that deems this building unsafe is not here tonight to answer anybody's questions. The very leadership that promotes these ordinances that say, oh, hey, public can't go in there, we can't go in there, has decided to not show up to listen to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that were opposed tonight, and that's just the ones that spoke. I'm very frustrated with that. Secondly, do I think that the likelihood of us saving this building is high? No, absolutely not. I think that, again, like you said, Butte-Silver has been stuck in a very difficult position because of prior ownership. I guess for me, the biggest thing is there things now, I guess, going forward, say this, we tear down the building, do all of that, we go to sell it. Will there be building standards that need to be followed? Historic preservation standards that need to be followed? Will there be, I guess, any type of, not rules, but some type of obligations that people can't just continue to neglect properties in Uptown Butte that then turn around and put every single one of us in a position where we have 10 people in the crowd that are pissed off, and then we have people up here that are, okay, let's do it, and we're in a really difficult position. So I feel like maybe it is time that we get back to the drawing board, sit down with the leadership who chooses to deem these buildings inappropriate, sit down with Mrs. Burns, sit down with Marc Neri, and get this figured out, because this is absurd. We can't keep coming back to, with every historic building in Uptown Butte that has the potential to be torn down, we can't just keep tearing them down. We need to address this issue now. And that is all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Thatcher, I will address that the people that did issue the letter and stuff are here. So this was not Director Randall that issued the safety exclusion of the letter. So we do have Dylan Pipinich that is here that can speak to that if you'd like him to come forward. Yeah, Commissioner Thatcher.
I'm just looking at an email that states from Mr. Randall that I was included on, that in fact stated that he, it was posted as dangerous, 135 East Park, fine, and then they reposted it, hired Dow, which is just the 135 engineering report.
Right.
I get that part. But then essentially, so it's just Dylan that can just say that? Because I feel like, isn't this Mr. Randall's job?
It's not Mr. Randall's job.
Community enrichment?
So 135 was voted on, and this commission took action on that.
Correct.
123 and 125 is before you tonight in an MOU and was posted by our building inspector, which is in Mr. Pipinich's direction. So that's
Rusty?
safety exclusion, so Rusty is there, but Mr. Pipinich is here to speak on his behalf. So if we'd like to have Mr. Pipinich come forward, he is here.
Sure, you can come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Dylan, for being here tonight. I don't have any questions. I would just like to note, I think it's important that the leadership that makes the decisions like this, not just you, not just Ms. Burns, not just Marc Neri, I think everybody that's involved in these huge decisions that we make for our county, answer to the public, should be here to answer these questions. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay.
So do you want him to speak towards the rationale or what was done with that? I'm just asking.
No, that's my only point.
Okay. Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'm pretty sure what answer I'm going to get here, the same answer I got on the Blue Range. When your employee, and I forget his name, he's fairly new, he's been there a couple months, right?
It's Mr. Christensen.
Right. When he designated it a dangerous building, did he go in the building and check it?
Commissioner Callahan, Director Pipinich.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Callahan, to be clear, the building is not designated as a dangerous building through our dangerous building ordinance. The safety exclusion provision is located in the historic preservation ordinance, and that is what is being invoked. He relied on the engineering report. He is not a professional engineer, and the engineer that wrote the report is.
That's the same answer we got on the Blue Range building. Okay, my question is, we don't want to stop the process. We want to fix what's broken. And we, as commissioners that are coming up here, getting beat up every time we get in this situation, are asking, when can we get involved in the process? They looked at the engineer's report. All I ask is I can go ask the engineer to take us down to that building and point out why he made his report. From what I understand, there's a lot of incomplete stuff on that report. I'm not an engineer and I don't know what to expect, but I have talked to people that are very sharp. If they would allow us to go in that, I was in that building. I cannot find damage on that rescue mission building, except for where the excavator damaged the back window or the back wall. That rescue mission building is a building within a building. Why do we have to build a wall? There's a wall there. Every 10 feet, there's a petition wall. It's already in the building. These are questions we got to ask the engineer, but we haven't been allowed to do that, and that's all we're asking. If it needs to be torn down, there's an option that has to happen, we're ready to vote on it. But the way we see it today, it's not fair to bring this to us without any information.
Commissioner Callahan, I wonder if you would like to have Brayton Erickson come up, because he is an individual that actually is in that building all the time and can kind of give you a condition of what the inside of the building looks like. He is the director of the rescue mission, if you'd like to bring him forward. Is that all right with you? Yes,
Commissioner
Callahan?
please.
Okay,
Please.
and then, Mr. Erickson, thank you.
Yeah, Chief Executive Callahan. We are operating in there, but really it's from my opinion, we're kind of victim of circumstance here. Those buildings are kind of all built together. And from the engineering report and from the talking to the engineer himself, deconstructing that building beside it becomes a danger to our building collapse, and that's why they stopped. And so, unfortunately, I'm not a professional either. I just talked to the engineer, and he was pointing out the fact that that building can't come down without a wall in there, and then all the other issues with our building, so.
And that's, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Chief Executive Gal. And that's what you've been told. All we're asking is the option to ask questions. I was in that building. I was told by your employees, we're not allowed in that building. We were told that you told them not to let us in that building. Is that what you were told?
No, there are
Commissioner
areas.
Callahan, Director Erickson, go ahead.
There are areas that aren't safe, you know, that the upstairs has not been occupied as far as our operations. And so, yeah, there are areas that they're not to go in, just for safety and for fire escape issues. But as far as going in the building, we've allowed the county, the inspectors, and the engineer as well, so.
Okay, one more question.
Commissioner Callahan?
You had a gentleman tonight offer you $100,000 for that building. Are you going to take 38 or are you going to take 100,000?
Commissioner Callahan, Director Erickson.
I don't think it's quite that easy in the sense that the wall would still have to be built, and then all of the fix would have to be, it just doesn't make sense for the taxpayers to carry the burden of that, and then all of the other issues that need to be upgraded on that building, so.
Okay, point of order.
It's not valuable to talk about prices when we're in a buy-sell position with people right now. It's not the proper place to discuss whether you should take $138.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Next, I think we have Commissioner Sorich, and then we'll go to, and, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I guess what I'm looking at, we asked, we were told by Mr. Pipinich, he's a professional in his department. Okay, we are to rely on the professionals, and I think that's what we've done. Mr. Pipinich just went out and got the engineer, we asked, the executive group, we're the legislative group. The executive group came in, and they got the engineering firms. They've asked the questions. They're showing us, we got to trust these people somewhere along the line. Like I was saying earlier, I don't have a PE. Nobody has a PE. And I see you looking at me like that. I don't care. I don't care. But anyways, I guess I would rather trust somebody with a whole lot of experience on this than trusting just going in and looking at it and say, yeah, that looks good.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorich. We'll go to Commissioner Fortune and then to Commissioner Shea, and then we'll continue on. Okay.
Just a comment, but I do have an engineering degree, and I got faith in the Public Works Director, Dylan, Rusty. I actually gave the budget to do the wall, so I know about it pretty well. I don't think that budget's accurate anymore. It's probably up because it's probably been a year now. You say you don't have any information. We've had these reports for at least a year. I mean, anybody can read them. It's public knowledge. Karen Burns, she has faith that we can market the building. I mean, he's happy with what's happening, I guess. It sounds like the only one who's not happy is you.
Okay. Commissioner Fortune. Now, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I have a couple of questions, a couple of follow-ups, so if you would please indulge me. Could I just ask Commissioner Fortune, were you bidding on the job? Or you just? I would like to defer to the county attorney if that's a conflict of interest.
County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shea, a conflict of interest for him to make it, to vote on whether or not we should enter into this MOU?
Possibly in the light of that he has consulted on it, which is what he just said, with preparing the budget for what the, I guess, the part of the wall construction. I'm not sure, maybe he could answer that.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shea, I don't, if the vote was whether or not to enter into a contract with Fortune Construction, he would definitely have a conflict there, but the fact that he was involved in making an estimate on whether or not to rebuild the wall, and that's not what the commissioners are being asked tonight to do, I don't think he has a conflict, because he doesn't have any financial interest in whether or not this MOU is entered into or not.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce, and Commissioner Shea, follow.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we, as a council, avoid any perception of impropriety, and that includes for Mr. Fortune, you know, being able to protect his own reputation going forward, because I know that it's very good in this town. So I have a couple of things here. We literally have one job here, and it's not to be a PE, it's to make a damn decision. That is our literal only job. And that job means we need to make an informed decision. And at this point, I do not feel like I can make an informed decision. I think this process has gone too fast. I think it's probably gone a little quickly for the rescue mission folks as well. This is a large portion of their operation. It's been an anchor in Uptown Butte. I go there myself. I love that thrift store. As far as fixing the problem, like Commissioner Callahan is saying, the executive branch, the legislative branch, we always hear that thrown around. We're co-equal. Co-equal. That means that we have equal. Yes, the executive branch brought this forward, but guess what? We signed the checks. We give the authorization for the agreements to be signed. We have the power to change this and fix it going forward. If we don't like the public exclusion, the public safety exclusion, guess what? We can propose a new ordinance to get rid of it, or add steps, or add levels of review. We can do that. We can do that as a group. So we can't sit here on our hands and feel like we are powerless, because we are not powerless. I would also like to say that the authorization that we gave to demolish the 135 West Park building, I regret my vote on that. At the time, I was very confident in it. I felt like we were being told everything that we needed to hear, everything we needed to know. My questions were sufficiently answered at that time, but I'm not that same person. I have a little more understanding of things and of what the community wants. So, you know, they say that those who fail to remember the past are doomed to repeat it, and I don't want to repeat this. I don't want to repeat this mistake. Butte is proud of its past. We are the most unique city in America, and one of the things that makes us unique, not only is it the people that live here, but it's the Uptown Historic District. When the Montana Movie Company was here, when we were working through the deal for them to purchase the old Montana Power building, they said, literally on the record, please don't tear down any more of your old buildings. This is big business. As a chair of the Economic Development Committee, I listened to a report tonight from our BLDC. There are major productions looking at our town right now. They're looking to do 6 episodes. Each episode would have a staff of 300 people, and it would bring $12 million per episode to this town. So those buildings do have some value. They are important to our economic well-being, more so than let's raise the building and sell the property and hope for the best. As far as Commissioner Thatcher wanting design standards, I want that too. We don't have those either. So this body has the power to put that in place as well, and I think that also needs to be done. To understand the level of pride that we have in this community, all you have to do is look to the treasure that is the public archives. Everything that is Butte lives there and breathes there, and people come from all over the world to see it, because I don't care where you go in this world, every single person you meet is going to have some tie to Butte If they don't, someone they know does. And so when we're looking at preserving our past and our diverse heritage, to me, it is frankly insulting to propose the demolition of a building in the historic district on the same night that we confirmed a new archives director. Does anybody else see the problem there? I just can't even fathom that we're talking about these two things on the same night. So I will close. I will keep the rest of it brief. I'd like to hold this in, per Commissioner Callahan. I have questions, and I would like the Butte Rescue Mission to still be able to explore other options, if they wish, with a contingency for Butte-Silver Bow. I would also, just one last thing, I do think that public safety exclusion is slightly disingenuous when, the building we condemned essentially more than a year ago, 15, 18 months ago, is still standing, and the building next to it is still being used in the purpose that it is intended as a functioning retail business. Thank you.
Commissioner Shea, I'd like to bring up Bill McLeod, because you asked a question about what the Butte Rescue Mission and kind of what they would like to do going forward. So I'd just like them I'd like to invite Bill just to speak to that just a little bit.
The Rescue Mission Board has evaluated the engineering report from Staley Engineering. We have, as Brayton said, restricted the second floor, that no one goes up there because, quite frankly, it's scary. And I want people to think about this fact that was 2 buildings, and what we were unaware of, we have 2 buildings there. We have 2 buildings, Commissioner Callahan. The third is your building. 135 is the county's. We have 2 buildings.
125 alone is 2 buildings. I'm sorry.
So there was at one time load-bearing walls that ran in that building that were removed. We don't know when, 50 years ago, that were removed, which has structurally impacted the integrity of the building. And if you read the engineer's report and the roof load is, I think it said it, something at 400%, when 100% is max. Our intentions are, we are closing the store on Saturday, and it will remain closed. We do not have funding. If this commission was to vote and say, we're going to put $150,000 into building a wall, we don't have the funding necessary to restore our building and make it safe. So we're going to end up sitting there like many other landlords in Butte with a building that continues to deteriorate, unless this council wants to find funding to help us finance that. I mean, that's the situation we're in. We were deeded that building 20 years ago by the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And, sitting back today as a board member, I'm like, why didn't we have an engineering study done on it 20 years ago? And why didn't we get an attorney? Because we're in this situation today with that building. We're going to do our sale on Saturday, most of it outside, because we're trying to limit the number of people in the building. We have already removed all extra inventory that was in the back, and we have sent that out to some other missions across the state to help them. So we are stepping back from the thrift store business at this point in time because that building doesn't work. I would like all of you to know that the chief executive and Karen Burns and Marc and Eileen Joyce, and the people in this county have worked with us. Karen worked to find alternate sites for us. I mean, they have just gone over and above in trying to help us, and we are so appreciative for that help. And I just like this council, you know, we always want to point out what's wrong or what doesn't happen the way we want it. These people have worked hard to help us through this solution and to walk us through these engineering reports. And as Brayton said, Brayton was there with the engineer when he went through the building. And quite frankly, we sat back as a mission board when we first got this thing. Well, the city can pay for this $150,000 wall. And we just said, how can we as taxpayers individually accept the city putting that type of money into the building when we knew the condition it was in? I mean, and sometimes we hate to see it torn down. We hate to see the history go away. But, you know, at sometimes we have to look at ours from an economic standpoint and say, we can't afford to continue to put money into that building. I'm sorry that it has to come down. I wish that 20 years ago we had put together a plan for how we were going to maintain the property. Mistakes were made, and I'm sorry. And we apologize for that, but.
Thank you, Mr. Gladdery. And then we have one follow-up with Commissioner Shea, and then we'll work our way across here.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Number one, I don't have a problem with the sale. I have a problem with the demolition. So I just want to clarify that. And I do appreciate the services that the Butte Rescue Mission provides in our community because I think they're very valuable. My question for the Chief Executive, the County Attorney, somebody is, what other options were considered before you arrived at this conclusion?
So Commissioner Shea, as it was evaluated, that we looked at the condition, the costs, and the condition of that building based on the structural engineer that went through that says that this building, although the age, the condition, there's sometimes that these buildings age out. The bricks are deteriorating, the structure of it is deteriorating, it's not recoverable, and sometimes, sad to say, that they must come down. Now, this being said, we did 3 engineering reports to try to save these buildings, not to tear them down. It was not the intent to get these engineering reports to find a way to tear down these buildings. It was to find out what the structural integrity was to be able to save those buildings, to give a report to the rescue mission if there was potential. We were looking as a Butte-Silver Bow that inherited 135. I want people to understand that we inherited a building that was in the condition that was. And then as we took on that, then that structural wall, we were looking to build a wall to make the thrift stores building structurally sound. By doing that, we worked with the rescue mission to go inside and look at their building to see how that would benefit, what that would do for their building. And in that report is when we found out what the structural integrity was in 123 and 125. So I want people to understand that there is not anybody in here that takes pleasure in tearing down these buildings. And is there a cost? Dan, there is. There's a cost to us, and our public works has to do the work of it. There's things that we have to do, and there's not one person in here that takes pleasure in that. That's not our intent. But there are times when some of these buildings get to a condition that they're not recoverable.
Last follow-up, I promise.
Okay, last one, Commissioner Shea.
So that building is only unrecoverable to someone who doesn't have the money to do it. If someone has the money to recover it and restore it, it's recoverable. Just want to make that distinction. We aren't a community that gives up, and we aren't ever Butte never has a defeatist attitude. We are the can-do city for a reason. So I do just want to clarify that somebody with the proper resources, and if it was in the proper hands, would be able to recover it. It happens all the time. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shea. I think Commissioner O'Neill, and then I'll come back to you, Commissioner.
Thank you,
Callahan.
Mr. Chief Executive. I'll be as quickly as I possibly can. Obviously, if I could get 38 or 100, I'm taking 100. Obviously, the county has their offer, and we're wanting to restore this building. I was just looking at one of the most historic things in my life, I think, was the old Yankee Stadium. They since tore that down. I just found the date. It was in 2006. They built a new one, a little bit different than these buildings, but where I'm going is that the new Yankee Stadium's just as awesome as the old one. However, the bathrooms and fire safety, it's a lot better. They got an offer now, right, from us. They know what they have here, or whatever that's in there. We don't have to decide tonight, okay? You got the guys in the back with checkbooks, I guess, wanting to give you a hunch. Take the hunch and have him resalvage it and rebuild it. There you go. I mean, there's one thing we can't do that. I mean, you're shaking your head no, but I don't know. We haven't bought the building yet. They still own it, right?
Thanks, Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Callahan, and then we'll come back across here.
I don't want to drag this on out. And
Yeah, I'm sorry, public comment is no, Mr. Moyland, sorry. Thank you.
I don't want to keep dragging this out, and I don't want to throw daggers, but speaking of conflict of interest, we as a council are required to get 3 bids on projects. Sometimes we have to go with the only bids we get. I'm shocked that Mr. Fortune would say he bid on that project and we had no other bids.
It wasn't a bid, it was an estimate of cost.
So was there any other estimates of cost?
It was just to ask what it would cost, construction costs on that. Commissioner Sorge, point of order. So just a point of clarification, there was no bid by Mr. Fortune. He was asked, so if we could have Director Neri come answer that question.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioner Callahan, Staley Engineering, the first time they came, they did a design to build the support wall, the $150,000 wall that we're talking about, but they couldn't give an estimate on what it was. So they had a design, and I just went to Commissioner Fortune. I went to Fortune Construction, not Commissioner Fortune, to get an idea of what that would cost. We weren't looking for bids. It was kind of a ballpark for what we could, what it would cost to do, and I'm sure it's more now, but that's all it was. So we had an idea of what it would cost. We didn't go out for bids.
Commissioner.
But basically, that's the price that keeps getting thrown around, is it's going to cost us $150,000 without asking other contractors if they could do it cheaper.
Commissioner Callahan, Director Neri.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Commissioner Callahan, we weren't looking to find the cheapest bid. We wanted to know what it was going to entail to do. And with this bid, because of what it was going to entail, I mean, I'm sure it was a fair bid. That's the way I feel about it.
In point of clarification, it was not a bid.
Or not a bid, sorry, an estimate, I'm sorry.
Okay. To follow up, we'll go to Commissioner Reardon, had his hands up, and then we'll go to you, Commissioner Fortune. And
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I've been sitting here, and I guess where I'm going to start, and I'm not going to keep it very long, I think that what we all see here is there's a bunch of new facts that have been thrown at us. We've experienced people that come in, basically maybe 6 or 7, still members of the community that are expressing their concern about the demolition of this building. We have a new offer for this building from an individual. We have demolition to look at. We have a check to cut and all that. I'm not going to be very long. I'm just going to make a motion that I think we owe it to.
We already have a motion and all motions.
Okay, all right, well, then I'm going to finish up then, is I think that we have to be fair to everybody this evening and gather our facts. I'm not a PE. There's some PEs around. you know, I just think, I just feel that what people at this table are trying to say is the fact that we just don't have enough information to make a decision like this at this time. And I'm not here to cause any controversy. I think controversy, if there is any, is in our lap for the fact that we don't have a procedure that we follow. And you know, there's a lot of guys that are in the construction business that you have to have a bond when you buy these buildings. It's called a performance bond. And I think that would be something that would pretty much help out. You know, there's a time period. And then when they applied or bought this building, say the Shiner building, there would be an estimate somewhat by Director Neri and maybe by a person in our ranks that would have costed to demolish that building. And if they didn't finish the project over a period of time, then they would be liable or they would be out the door. The controversy is in our laps. One time we go with this ordinance, one time we go with that. This guy says this PE says that, and all that stuff. We can't afford to do business like this anymore. And I'm not being facetious toward anybody or anybody's decision, but I think we better get our butts in line and basically let people know what the procedure is for sure when demolishing these buildings, when buying these buildings, and the completion of these buildings and what is expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Fortune.
Just to clarify, I never gave like a formal bid. It was a budgetary estimate that was requested by Butte-Silver and Staley. There was no profit included. It was what I thought it would cost. And Wet's been insulted tonight. Staley's been insulted tonight. I've been insulted tonight. We all know what we're doing. I do it every day. I bid things every day. It's going to be a lot cheaper to tear it down. And just for the record, there's a lot of talented builders in this town that we could build something historical. And someone brought up that there's no historical standards uptown, but Dylan could probably say that there is historical standards. So there's back to Mr. O'Neill. You could build a lot of nice things that are new. And
Commissioner Fortune, one thing that I will say is that this commission is going to be able to accept or not accept who would purchase that property, and you could put conditions on that property of what we would like to see based on having standards or not standards. So this commission is the authorization of when we dispose of public property. This commission does have ultimate say on that. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. You know, there's good points here. You know, Commissioner Shea, Commissioner Callahan, Commissioner Reardon all went back to this, you know, ordinance thing, you know, and 3 years ago, whatever, I don't know, it was a while back, we went in and changed this ordinance. You know, we had meetings after meetings about mothballing buildings, studying buildings and everything. So I do agree, the system is broken, it needs to be fixed. But before us tonight isn't to fix that. That's got to be another communication, run through judiciary, you get a public hearing, you figure out what people really want to do with these. The thing is, tonight, we're supposed to make a decision on an MOU, you know. That's our job as commissioners. Now, we can hold this in abeyance, we can kick it down the road, we can do whatever you want. But our job as commissioners, and it's a tough one, is to make a decision. And that's what we're here to do tonight. And where we're at right now, we're no further ahead right now than we were 2 years ago when they started excavating the back of that building. And I appreciate Mr. Neri's experienced operators in getting that done. But right now, we're not operators, we're council people. What we're supposed to do right now is make a decision, whether we're going to approve the MOU or not. We're not approving the demolition right now. We're approving an MOU. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So we're getting way off track on some things. Let's go back and realize we got a broken system. We tried fixing it numerous times in 8 years I've been here, 10 years I've been here. We've not come to the final result yet. I say we go back to the drawing board and try to fix it. But I think tonight we should try to make a decision, or at least make a decision in the next week or 10 days, because we're just getting further behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I guess I'd just like to state, too, that my frustration does not lie with Mr. Neri or Mrs. Burns at all. I have all the faith in the world in the work that they do, and like everybody here is saying tonight, you know, we value the input of the PEs, and we value the input of the professionals in their industries. That's not where my frustration lies. Again, like Mr. Fisher said, the system is broken, and that's where my frustration lies. I do appreciate Mr. McGlattery being here tonight, and to me, it seems like they're good with this deal. Am I good with us tearing down the building? No, but this is the deal that's been made. So like Commissioner Fisher said, this is it. So I do think that maybe that's something that we should also take into consideration is, you know, here are the cards we've been given. If the rescue mission's happy, we're not all going to be happy, surely, but this is what we need to be focused on tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I'm going to call for the vote.
So we'll call for the question. And can we refer back to what we're voting on? So the first one that you're voting on is to holding in abeyance. So right now what you would do is we would hold this in abeyance, so everybody understands that this would just get held. And hold in abeyance.
You can't do that.
You can't.
So the motions you can make is an original motion, a substitute motion, and then a motion to end all motions. And you
And that
go
was still
backwards
holding
on the
this.
vote. You start with the motion to end all motions, which was yours. You can't make a motion to kill the other motions. You vote on yours first, the motion to end all motions. If that fails, you go to the substitute motion. If that fails, you go to the original motion. If yours passes, you're done.
Okay, the first motion is to hold in abeyance. Yes, that was the last motion. So that was your motion. That was the very last motion you can have, and then if it doesn't pass, then we move backwards. Okay? So it's to hold in abeyance. That's what the commissioners are voting on, so everyone is clear on that. Okay? It's the third one, so. Yeah, and so if that happens, if it passes, we'll hold it in abeyance. If it does not pass, we'll go back to the previous motion, the substitute motion. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I just have a quick question, if I could ask Mr. McGlattery to come back up here.
Mr. McGlattery. Okay, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Mr. McGlattery. Did you say that you're kind of needing this to be passed as far as funding-wise, or would it be, I guess, okay with the Rescue Commission to sit on it for a certain amount of days?
Commissioner Thatcher, Mr. McGlattery.
Our intention is we are closing the store on Saturday, so that building will be a vacant storefront on East Park.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGlattery. All right, any other questions? Now, we are calling the question, so you're voting to hold this in abeyance. Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
6 yea, 5 nay.
6 yea, 5 nay, motion passes. So we're holding this in abeyance. Okay. Moving on. We are on to Section 3, Ordinances and Resolutions introduced to Judiciary. We have two tonight, Resolution number 2022-20 and Resolution number 2022-22. Please note that they will be introduced into Judiciary. Moving on to Section 4, Ordinances and Resolutions for second reading. We have one ordinance number 2022-01 and Council Bill number 2022-01. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance repealing Title 18 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSB MC, entitled Floodplain Regulation, Ordinance 89, 1979, in its entirety, and replacing it with a new title referencing the model regulations entitled Floodplain Hazard Management Regulations, and providing for an effective day herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to place Council Bill number 2022-01, Ordinance number 2022-01 on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second, passing second reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 5, ordinance and resolutions for emergency suspension of the rules for final passage. We have one resolution number 2022-19. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move for the suspension of the rules for the purpose of passing Resolution number 2022-19 and Resolution number 2022-21 by waiving subsection 7 of Rule 36 of the Rules of Order of Business of the Council of Commissioners, thereby having it considered for advanced passage without reference to the Judiciary Committee.
We have a motion and a second for the emergency suspension of the rules. Is there anything on the question? There's two of them. Do we do them both at the same time? Oh, we can do it, and so we can do the second one too.
I added it in there.
Okay, I'm sorry. So for both resolutions, could commissioners please vote? And clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to resolution number 2022-19. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution authorizing and approving the transfer of real property described as Lot 3B of Certificate of Survey 838B, located in Section 28, Township 03N, Range 09W, within the City County of Butte-Silver, Montana, to MTRJW1 Development, a limited liability corporation, in accordance with the provisions of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to place resolution number 2022-19 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to pass this on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2022-21. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution approving the dissolution of the County Water and Sewer District of Montana, adopting their plan of dissolution, and providing for the effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to place resolution number 2022-21 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to pass resolution number 2022-21 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 6, ordinance and resolutions for final passage. We have resolution number 2022-17. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution authorizing the submission of an application for Audacitor Consulting LLC with the Department of Commerce of the State of Montana for Big Sky Economic Development Trust Fund program under the terms of Community Development Act of 1974, 42 U.S.C. 5301, as amended.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to place resolution number 2022-17 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to place resolution number 2022-17 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change the vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to the calendar and other meeting event, or I take that back. Let's go to public comment on any public matter not on the agenda tonight. If you have anything that you would like to come forward and talk about that is not on the agenda tonight, please come to the microphone, state your name and address and what you would like to speak about. Seeing none, we will go on to the calendar and other events. Please note all of the meeting times, and so I would take a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.